Chapter 43, Parenthood. When ecstatic love develops into the relationship of parenthood and becomes steadily established, the relationship is called Vatsalya Ras. The exhibition of this Vatsalya Ras standard of devotional service can be found in the dealings of Krsna with his devotees who represent themselves as superior personalities like father, mother, teacher, etc. Learned scholars have described the impetus of parental love for Krsna, existing in the elderly personalities who are in relation with him as follows, quote, "The Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose bodily complexion is just like a bluish, new-grown lotus flower, whose body is very delicate, whose lotus eyes are surrounded by scattered hair as black as bees, was walking on the streets of Vrindavan when Mother Yasoda, the beloved wife of Nanda Maharaj, saw him. Immediately, the milk began to flow from her breast, soaking her body." End quote. Some specific provocations for parental love for Krsna are listed as his blackish bodily hue, which is very attractive and pleasing to see, his all-auspicious bodily features, his mildness, his sweet words, his simplicity, his shyness, his humility, his constant readiness to offer respect to the elderly, and his charity. All of these qualities are considered ecstatic provocations for parental love. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th Canto, 8th Chapter, 35th Verse, it is stated by Sukadeva Goswami that Mother Yasoda accepted Lord Krsna as her son, although he is accepted in the Vedas as the King of Heaven, in the Upanishads as the impersonal Brahman, and in philosophy as the Supreme Male. By the yogis, he is accepted as the Supersoul, and by the devotees as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Once Mother Yasoda addressed one of her friends in this way, quote, "Nanda Maharaj, the leader of the cowherdsmen, worshipped Lord Vishnu along with me, and as a result of this worshipping, Krsna has been saved from the clutches of Putana and other demons. The twin Arjuna trees were, of course, broken to a strong wind, and although Krsna appeared to have lifted Govardhan Hill along with Balaram, I think that Nanda Maharaj actually held the mountain. Otherwise, how could it have been possible for a little boy to lift such a great hill?" End quote. This is another example of ecstasy in parental love. This kind of parental love is generated in a devotee out of his conviction, in love, that he himself is superior to Krsna, and without being taken care of by such devotee, Krsna could not possibly live. One devotee therefore prayed to the parents of Lord Krsna as follows, quote, "Let me take shelter of the elderly parental devotees of Lord Krsna. They are always anxious to serve Krsna and to maintain him, and they are always so kind to him. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto them for being so kind to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the parent of the whole universe." End quote. There's a similar prayer by a Brahmin who says, quote, "Let others worship the Vedas and the Upanishad. Let others worship the Mahabharata if they are afraid of material existence and want to become liberated from that condition. But as far as I'm concerned, I wish only to worship Maharaj Nanda, because the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead, Krsna, is crawling in his courtyard as his own child." End quote. Following is a list of respectful personalities who enjoy parental affection toward Krsna. 1. Mother Yasoda, the Queen of Braj. 2. Nanda Maharaj, the King of Braj. 3. Mother Rohini, the mother of Balaram. 4. All the elderly gopis whose sons were taken away by Lord Brahma. 5. Devaki, the wife of Vasudeva. 6. The other 15 wives of Vasudeva. 7. Kunti, the mother of Arjuna. 8. Vasudeva, the real father of Krishna, and Sandapani Muni, Krishna's teacher. All these are considered respectable elderly personalities with parental love for Krishna. This list is in order of superior importance, and thus we can see Mother Yasoda, Nanda Maharaj are considered to be the supermost of all elderly personalities. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 9th chapter, 2nd verse, Sukadeva Goswami gives Maharaj Parikshit a description of the form and beauty of Mother Yasoda. He says, quote, "My dear king, the wide hips of Mother Yasoda were surrounded by silk and linen cloths. Her breasts were flowing with milk because of her affection. When she was churning butter, tightly holding the rope, the bangles on her hands and the earrings on her ears were moving, and from the nice decoration in her hair, the flowers were slackening and falling down. Due to her excessive labor, there were drops of perspiration on her face." End quote. There is another description of Mother Yasoda in a devotee's prayer. Quote, "Let me be given protection by Mother Yasoda, whose curly hairs are bound with thread, whose hair is very brightly beautified by the vermilion placed in the part, and whose bodily frame derides all her ornaments. Her eyes are always engaged in seeing the face of Krishna, and thus they're always filled with tears. She has a complexion like the bluish lotus flower, which is enhanced in beauty by her dressing herself with many colorful garments. Let her merciful glance fall on all of us, so that we may be protected from the clutches of Maya and smoothly progress in our devotional service." End quote. There is the following description of Mother Yasoda's affection for Krishna. After rising early in the morning, Mother Yasoda first of all offered her breast milk to Krishna. Then she began to chant various mantras for his protection. Then she would decorate his forehead very nicely, bind his arms with protective talismans. By all of these activities, it is definitely understood that she is the emblem of all maternal affection for Krishna. The description of Nanda Maharaj's bodily features is as follows. The hairs on his head are generally black, but some of them are gray. His garments are of greenish color, like the new-grown leaves of a banyan tree. His belly is fatty. His complexion is exactly like the full moon, and he has a beautiful mustache. When Krishna was a baby, one day he was walking in the courtyard, capturing the finger of his father. Because he could not walk steadily, he appeared to be almost falling down. While Nanda Maharaj was giving protection to his transcendental son in this way, all of a sudden there were drops of tears in his eyes. He became overwhelmed with joy. Let us all offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of King Nanda. Childhood age, childhood dress, movements by the child, sweet words spoken by the child, nice smiling, various forms of childish play are considered provocations for increasing the parental love for Krishna. The childhood ages of Krishna are divided into 3 periods: the beginning of the Kumara age, the middle of the Kumara age, and the end of the Kumara age. During the beginning and middle of the Kumara age, Krishna's thighs are fatty, and the inner part of his eyes are whitish. There are signs of teeth coming out, and he's very mild and gentle. He's described as follows, quote, "When Krishna had only 3 or 4 teeth coming out of his gums, his thighs were fatty, his body was very, very short, and he began to enhance the parental love of Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yasoda with the activities of his childish body. He was sometimes stepping with his legs again and again, sometimes crying, sometimes smiling, sometimes sucking his thumb, sometimes lying down flat. These are some of the different activities of the child Krishna. When Krishna was lying down flat, sometimes sucking the toes of his feet, sometimes throwing his legs upward, sometimes crying, sometimes smiling. Mother Yasoda, seeing her son in such pastimes, did not show any sign of restricting him, but rather began to watch her child with eagerness, enjoying these childhood pastimes." End quote. In the beginning of Krishna's Kumara age, there were the nails of tigers set in a golden necklace about his neck. There was protective tilak on his forehead, black mascara around his eyes, and silk thread around his waist. These are the descriptions of Krishna's dress at the beginning of the Kumara age. When Nanda Maharaj saw the beauty of child Krishna with tiger nails on his chest, a complexion like the new-grown tamala tree, beautifully decorated tilak made with cow's urine, arm decorations of nice silk thread and silk cloths tied around his waist. When Nanda Maharaj saw his child like this, he never became satiated by the child's beauty. In the middle Kumara age, the upper portion of Krishna's hair falls around his eyes. Sometimes he is covered with cloth around the lower part of his body. Sometimes he is completely naked. Sometimes he tries to walk, taking step by step, and sometimes he talks very sweetly in broken language. These were some of the symptoms of his middle Kumara age. He is thus described when Mother Yasoda once saw him in his middle Kumara age. His scattered hairs were touching his eyebrows, his eyes were restless, but he could not express his feelings with proper words. Still, when he was talking, it was so nice and sweet to hear. When Mother Yasoda looked at his little ears and saw him naked, trying to run very quickly with his little legs, she was merged into the ocean of nectar. Krishna's ornaments at this age are a pearl hanging from the septum of his nose, butter on his lotus-like palms, and some small bells hanging from his waist. It is stated that when Mother Yasoda saw that the child was moving, ringing the bells on his waist, smiling at her with a pearl between his nostrils, and with butter on his hands, she became wonderfully pleased to see her little child in that fashion. When Krishna was in the middle of his Kumara age, his waist became thinner, his chest became broader, and his head was decorated with his curly hairs, resembling the falling of the wings of a crow. These wonderful features of Krishna's body never failed to astonish Mother Yasoda. At the end of his Kumara age, Krishna carried a small stick in his hand. His clothing was a little longer, and he had a knot around his waist, resembling the hood of a snake. In that dress he used to take care of the calves near the house, and sometimes he played with cowherd boys of about the same age. He had a slender flute and a buffalo horn bugle, and sometimes he played on a flute made from the leaves of trees. These are some of the symptoms of the end of Krishna's Kumara age. When Krishna was a little grown-up and was taking care of the small calves, he would often go near the forest. And when he was a little bit late returning home, Nanda Maharaj would immediately get up on the Chandrasalika, which is a small shed built on the roof for getting a bird's eye view all around. And he would watch for him. Worrying about the late arrival of his little son, Nanda Maharaj would remain on the Chandrasalika until he could indicate to his wife that Krishna, surrounded by his little cowherd friends, was coming back with the calves. Nanda Maharaj would point out the peacock feather on his child's head and would inform his beloved wife how the child was pleasing his eyes. Mother Yasoda then addressed Nanda Maharaj, quote, "See my dear son, whose eyes are white, a turban on his head, a wrapper on his body, and leg bells which tinkle very sweetly on his feet. He's coming near, along with his Sarabi cows. Just see how he is wandering upon the sacred land of Vrindavan." End quote. Similarly, Maharaj Nanda addressed his wife, quote, "My dear Yasoda, just look at your offspring Krishna. See his blackish bodily luster, his eyes tinged with red color, his broad chest, his nice golden necklace. How wonderful he looks, how he is increasing my transcendental bliss more and more." End quote. When Krsna, the beloved son of Nanda Maharaj, steps into his Kishora age, although he becomes more beautiful, his parents still consider him as being in the Paganda age, even though he is between the ages of 10 and 15. When Krsna is in his Paganda age, some of his servants also accept him as being in the Kishora age. When Krsna performs his childish pastimes, his general practice is to break the milk in yogurt pots, throw the yogurt in the courtyard, and steal the cream from the milk. Sometimes he breaks the churning rod. Sometimes he throws butter on the fire. In this way, he increases the transcendental pleasure of his mother Yasoda. In this connection, Mother Yasoda once told Mukara, her maidservant, quote, "Just look at Krsna looking stealthily toward all sides and slowly stepping forward from the bushes. It appears that he's coming to steal the butter. Don't expose yourself, or he may understand that we're looking towards him. I want to enjoy the sight of his eyebrows moving in this cunning way, and I want to see his fearful eyes and beautiful face." End quote. In enjoying Krishna's attitude of stealing butter very stealthily, Mother Yashoda experienced the ecstasy of maternal love by smelling his head, sometimes patting his body with her hand, sometimes offering blessings, sometimes ordering him, sometimes gazing at him, sometimes maintaining, and sometimes giving him good instructions not to become a thief. Such activities are in maternal ecstatic love. An important point to be observed in this connection is that the childish propensity of stealing is there, even in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore this propensity is not artificial. However, in the spiritual relationship, there's no inebriety to the stealing propensity, as there is in the material world. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 13th chapter, verse 39, Sukadeva Goswami tells Parikshit, quote, "My dear king, as soon as the elderly gopis saw their sons coming, there was an inexpressible sign of parental love, and all of them became absorbed in affection. At first, they were planning to chastise their sons for stealing butter, but as soon as the sons came before their eyes, they lost all of their angry attitudes and became overwhelmed with affection. They began to embrace their sons and smell their heads. While doing this, they became almost mad after their children." End quote. In their childhood pastimes, all these cowherd boys joined Krsna in stealing butter. But rather than become angry, Mother Yasoda became wet from the milk flowing out of her breast. Out of her affection for Krsna, she began to smell his head repeatedly. The general activities of all the mothers of the cowherd boys were to kiss them, to embrace them, to call them by their names, and sometimes to mildly chastise them for their stealing habits. These manifestations of parental love are called sattvika ecstasy, wherein manifestations of 8 kinds of ecstatic symptoms are visible in full. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 13th chapter, 19th verse, Sukadeva Goswami tells King Parikshit, quote, "All the mothers of the cowherd boys were illusioned by the covering influence of Yogamaya potency of the personality of Godhead, and as soon as they heard the flute playing of their boys, they immediately stood up and mentally embraced their sons, who had been created by the direct internal potency of Krsna. Accepting them as their born sons, they lifted them into their arms and began to embrace them, resting the children's bodies upon their own. The emotions created by this incident were sweeter than nectar turned into a palatable intoxicant, and the milk flowing out of their breasts was immediately drunk up by the children." End quote. In the Lalita Madhava compiled by Rupa Goswami, Krsna is addressed as follows, quote, My dear Krishna, when you are engaged in herding the animals, the dust caused by the hoofs of the calves and cows covers your nice face and artistic tilak, and you appear very dusty. But when you return home, the milk flowing out of the breasts of your mother washes your face of its dust covering, and it appears that you are purified by this milk. It is just like when the deity is washed during the performance of the Abhishek ceremony." End quote. It is the custom in the temples of deities that if there have been some impure activities, the deity has to be washed with milk. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he was washed by the milk from the breast of Mother Yasoda, which purified him from the dust covering. Sometimes there are examples of Mother Yasoda's becoming stunned in ecstasy. This was exhibited when she saw her son lifting Govardhan Hill. When Krishna was standing, raising the hill, Mother Yasoda hesitated to embrace him and became stunned. The dangerous position that Krishna had accepted by lifting the hill brought tears to her eyes, and with her eyes filled with tears she could not see Krishna any more, and because her throat was choked up by anxiety, she could not even instruct Krishna as to what he should do in that position. This is a symptom of becoming stunned in ecstatic love. Mother Yasoda sometimes enjoyed transcendental ecstasy and happiness when her child was saved from a dangerous situation, such as being attacked by Putana or some other demon. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 17th chapter, 15th verse, Sukadeva Goswami says that Mother Yasoda felt very, very fortunate when she got back her lost child. She immediately placed him on her lap and began to embrace him again and again. While she was thus embracing her son repeatedly, torrents of tears fell from her eyes. She was unable to express her transcendental joy. It is stated in Vidagdha Madhava of Srila Rupa Goswami, quote, "My dear Krishna, the touch of your mother is so pleasing and cooling that it surpasses the cooling capacity of the pulp of sandalwood and of bright moonshine mixed with the pulp of usira root." End quote. Usira root is a kind of root which, when soaked with water, has a very, very cooling effect. It's especially used in the scorching heat of the sun. The parental love of Mother Yasoda for Krishna steadily increases, and her love and ecstasy are sometimes described as intense affection and sometimes as overwhelming attachment. An example of attachment for Krishna with overwhelming affection is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 6th chapter, 27th verse, where Sukadeva Goswami addresses Maharaj Parikshit in this way, quote, "My dear king, when magnanimous Nanda Maharaj returned from a tour, he began to smell the head of his son, and he was merged in the ecstasy of parental love." End quote. A similar statement is there in connection with Mother Yasoda when she was too anxious to hear the sound of Krishna's flute, expecting him back from the pasturing ground. Because she thought that it was getting very late, her anxiety to hear the sound of Krishna's flute became doubled, and milk began to flow out from her breast. In that condition, she was sometimes going within the house, sometimes coming out of the house. She was constantly looking to see if Govinda was coming back along the road. When many very great sages were offering prayers to Lord Krishna, glorifying his activities, the Queen of Gokula, Mother Yasoda, entered the battlefield of Kurukshetra, wetting the lower part of her sari with the milk flowing from her breast. This entrance of Mother Yasoda at Kurukshetra was not during the battle of Kurukshetra. At other times, Krishna went to Kurukshetra from his paternal home, Dwarka, during the solar eclipse, and at these times the residents of Vrindavan also went to see him there. When Krishna arrived at Kurukshetra in pilgrimage, all the people assembled there began to say that Krishna, the son of Devaki, had arrived. At that time, Devaki, just like an affectionate mother, began to pat Krishna's face. And again, when people cried that Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, had come, both King Nanda and Mother Yasoda became overwhelmed with affection and expressed their great pleasure. When Mother Yasoda, the queen of Gokula, was going to see her son at Kurukshetra, one of her friends began to address her thus, quote, "My dear queen, the milk flowing out of your breast mountain has already whitened the river Ganges, and the tears from your eyes mixed with black mascara have already blackened the color of the Yamuna. And as you are standing there just between the two rivers, I think there's no need for your anxiety to see your son's face. Your parental affection has already been exhibited to him by these two rivers." End quote. The same friend of Mother Yasoda addressed Krsna as follows, quote, "My dear Mukunda, if Mother Yasoda, the queen of Gokula, is forced to stand on fire, but is allowed to see your lotus face, then this fire will appear to her as the Himalayan mountains full of ice. In the same way, if she is allowed to stay in the ocean of nectar, but is not allowed to see the lotus face of your grace, then even this ocean of nectar will appear to her as an ocean of arsenic poison." End quote. Let the anxiety of Mother Yasoda of Braj, always expecting to see the lotus face of Krsna, be glorified all over the universe. A similar statement was given by Kunti Devi to Akrura. Quote, "My dear brother Akrura, my nephew Mukunda is long absent from us. When will you kindly tell him that his aunt Kunti is sitting amongst the enemy and would like to know when she will be able to see his lotus face again?" End quote. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 46th chapter, 2nd verse, there is the statement, quote, "When Uddhava was present at Vrindavan and was narrating the activities of Krsna in Dwarka, Mother Yasoda, while hearing this narration, began to pour milk from her breasts and shed tears from her eyes." End quote. Another incident demonstrating Yasoda's extreme love for Krsna occurred when Krsna went to Mathura, the kingdom of Kamsa. In separation from Krsna, Mother Yasoda was looking at Krishna's makeup utensils. She fell down on the ground almost unconscious, with a great sound. When she was rolling over on the ground, there were many scratches on her body, and in that piteous condition she began to cry, quote, "Oh, my dear son, oh, my dear son." End quote. She slapped her breasts with her two hands. This activity of Mother Yasoda is explained by expert devotees as ecstatic love in separation. Sometimes there are many other symptoms such as great anxiety, lamentation, frustration, being stunned, humility, restlessness, madness, and illusion. As far as Mother Yasoda's anxieties are concerned, when Krsna was out of the house in the pasturing ground, a devotee once told her, quote, "Yasoda, I think your movements have been slackened, and I see you are full of anxieties. Your two eyes appear to be without any movement, and I feel in your breathing a kind of warmth, which is bringing your breast milk to the boiling point. All these conditions prove that, out of separation from your son, you have a severe headache." End quote. These are some of the symptoms of Mother Yasoda's anxiety for Krsna. When Akrura was present in Vrindavan and was narrating the activities of Krsna in Dwarka, Mother Yasoda was informed that Krsna had married so many queens and was very busy there in his household affairs. Hearing this, Mother Yasoda lamented how unfortunate she was that she could not get her son married just after passing his Kaishora age, and thus she could not receive both her son and daughter-in-law at her home. She exclaimed, quote, "My dear Akrura, you are simply throwing thunderbolts on my head." End quote. These are the signs of lamentation on the part of Mother Yasoda in separation from Krsna. Similarly, Mother Yasoda felt frustration when she thought, quote, "Although I have millions of cows, the milk of these cows could not satisfy Krsna. Therefore let a curse be on this milk. And I also am condemned because, although I am so opulent in material prosperity, I'm now unable to smell the head of my child and feed him with my breast milk, as I used to do when he was here in Vrindavan." End quote. This is a sign of frustration on the part of Mother Yasoda in separation from Krsna. One friend of Krishna's addressed him thus, quote, "My dear lotus-eyed one, when you were living in Gokula, you were always bearing a stick in your hand. That stick is now lying idle in the house of Mother Yasoda. Whenever she sees it, she becomes motionless just like the stick." End quote. This is the sign of becoming stunned in separation from Krsna. In separation from Krsna, Mother Yasoda became so humble that she prayed to the Creator of the universe, Lord Brahma, with tears in her eyes. Quote, "My dear Creator, won't you kindly bring my dear son back to me, so that I can see him at least for a moment?" End quote. Sometimes in restlessness, like a madwoman, Mother Yasoda used to accuse Nanda Maharaj. Quote, "What are you doing in the palace, you shameless man? Why do people call you the king of Braj? It is very astonishing that while being separated from your dear son Krsna, you are still living within Vrindavan as a hard-hearted father." End quote. Someone informed Krsna about the madness of Mother Yasoda in the following words. Quote, "In madness, Mother Yasoda has addressed the Kadamba trees and inquired from them, 'Where is my son?' Similarly, she has addressed the birds and drones and inquired from them as to whether Krsna has passed before them, and she has inquired if they can say anything about you. In this way, Mother Yasoda in illusion was asking everybody about you, and she has been wandering all over Vrindavan." End quote. This is madness in separation from Krsna. When Nanda Maharaj was accused by Mother Yasoda of being hard-hearted, he replied, quote, "My dear Yasoda, why are you becoming so agitated? Kindly look more carefully. Just see, your son Krsna is standing before you. Don't become a madwoman like this. Please keep my home peaceful." End quote. And Krsna was informed by some friend that his father Nanda was also in illusion in this way, in separation from him. When all the wives of Vasudeva were present, in the arena of Kamsa, they saw the most pleasing bodily features of Krsna, and immediately out of parental affection, milk began to flow from their breasts, and the lower parts of their saris became wet. This symptom of ecstatic love is an example of the result of fulfillment of desire. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th chapter, 25th verse, it is stated, quote, "When Krsna entered Dwarka, after finishing the battle of Kurukshetra, he first of all saw his mother and all his different stepmothers and offered his respectful obeisances unto their feet. The mothers immediately took Krsna upon their laps, and because of their parental affection, there was milk flowing out of their breasts. So their breast milk, mixed with the water of tears, became the first offering to Krsna. This is one of the examples of being satisfied after a great separation." There is a similar statement in Lalita Madhava, quote, "How wonderful it is that Yasoda, the wife of King Nanda, out of her parental affection for Krsna, mixed her tears and the milk from her breast, and thus bathed her dear son Krsna." End quote. In Vidagdha Madhava, a devotee addresses Krsna as follows, quote, "My dear Mukunda, just after seeing your face full with the flavor of the lotus flower, and being attracted by the moonlight of your face, Mother Yasoda became so overjoyed in her affection that immediately from the nipples of her water pot-like breast milk began to flow." End quote. She was constantly engaged in supplying milk to Krsna after wetting the covering cloth over the jug. These are some of the signs of parental love for Krsna by his mother, father, and elderly persons. Symptoms of ecstatic love and parental affection are expressed when Krishna is accepted as the Son. These constant transcendental emotions for Krishna are called steady ecstasy and parental love. Srila Rupa Goswami states herein that, according to some learned scholars, the three kinds of transcendental mellows so far described, namely servitude, fraternity, and parental affection, are sometimes mixed up. For example, the fraternal feelings of Balaram are mixed with servitude and parental affection. Similarly, King Yudhishthira's attraction for Krishna is also mixed with parental affection and servitude. Similarly, the transcendental mellow of Ugrasen, Krishna's grandfather, is mixed with servitude and parental affection. The affection of all the elderly gopis in Vrindavan is a mixture of parental love, servitude, and fraternity. The affection of the sons of Madri, Nakula and Sahadev, as well as the affection of sage Narada, is a mixture of friendship and servitude. The affection of Lord Shiva, Garuda, and Uddhava is a mixture of servitude and fraternity.